Well, good evening. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. You all have heard about training scars, right? Well, I want to talk a little bit about what I call training damage. The damage that can actually come from training, improper training, or training where you become stagnant at a level and don't continue to progress, either mentally or physically. Welcome to everyone. Welcome especially to all the new people, both on YouTube and on Patreon. After I shoot this, I'll be shooting a second one for just Patreon that has to do with dry practice, how important that is. Dry practice is vital in today's world, and why I concentrate on it, why I stress it so much with the people that I train, and what you can expect to get out of it, how to go about it. I'll give you a couple of the clues that I tell people that I train, and if you'll do it, it'll make a big difference in how you actually function, whether you're training on a range or whether it comes down to something real. Okay. What do I mean by training damage? You all know what I mean by training scar. And I mean, not just what I mean, but what is meant by training scar. And that's when you essentially end up including something in your training that is not proper. And as a result, after you do it time and time and time again, it becomes a part of your regimen to your detriment. Right? Okay. Second son and I went over today to a local range to pick up some ammo that they had at an unbelievable price, and 45 ammo, not 9mm ammo. And I wanted him to. I haven't really started yet training him. But my main purpose was to get him accustomed to the environment, so that as he sees things going on around him, he becomes more comfortable with it. It's not a foreign atmosphere to him, not a foreign environment. Because I don't spend a lot of time at the range myself. It's not something I go over as needed just to check and see whether I've lost anything, and when I'm satisfied that I'm still all right, that's it for me. I am not wound up in the constant, I should say. Consistent's one thing, constant's quite another, and constant doesn't mean consistent. Anyway, that's the way I do it. I make sure that I'm still up to what I consider the speed I need to be, and that's good. But it's good to accustom yourself to the environment. It's just like if you're going to go out and if you're going to teach people how to ride a horse, you don't just take them out and have them take them to the first place they've ever seen a horse and say, "There's a horse, get on that horse, and let's go learn how to ride a horse." That is not the way that I believe in it. If somebody wants to learn about horses, I say, let's go out and kind of just hang in the environment and get used to the horse culture and see how horses move and how they act, and be around people who are riding horses, and see what some do right and what some do wrong, and all of that. And as you get comfortable in that environment, then when you actually get to the point to where you're about to step on that horse for the first time, it's not totally alien to you. And so that's the same thing that I think about when introducing people to guns. So what I wanted, my purpose was to take him out there and have a cup of coffee and a Coke and eat some chips and watch the people shooting on the range, because I was going to use it as an opportunity to show him different people and say, watch this, look at that, that's good, that's not quite so good, here's what to keep in mind, and just have kind of an enjoyable time. Well, the interesting thing was, what is today, Wednesday? We went over there at a time that would be usually busy, and there wasn't a soul on that range. And this is a very popular range. There wasn't a single soul. There was a couple back on a separate range, but none where it could be seen from the lounge area. Okay. So I said, well, let's sit down anyway, and we'll have a couple of cookies and just chat for a minute. And but they did have, it turned out, they had a bunch of video playing on a TV there, a large screen TV, of some of their. There's a couple of our ducks flying away. I think they go over and they spend the day in the neighbor's pool across the street, and then when it comes time to go home, I guess, they go down to the creek down in the woods, because that's where I see them early in the morning. Anyway, back to this range, they did have a bunch of their training classes playing on the screens, kind of a promotional thing, right? I didn't want to say anything too negative at first. And I didn't say anything too negative to my son, but he brought up some very interesting things. Now this is someone who is 12 years old. And as we watched, I noticed what I noticed so often at gun ranges and when I watch training classes. The first is that most of the people in there are obviously relying on their gun handling ability to protect themselves. Now that's a kind way. I'm trying to kindly say these people are obviously not in shape, and that a gun is the only way they're going to be able to defend themselves. Let me put it a little more bluntly, because I can be blunt when I'm telling the truth. And if I were talking to these people face to face, as I have people face to face in this, I would say, you're overweight. There's no reason for you to be like that, except that you lack the discipline or the drive or the will or the understanding that you should change it. Aside from being unhealthy, aside from any number of other things, it is tactically negative. Okay? If you can't move, if you don't have the mobility that an in-shape human body gives you, you have already set yourself up to fail. That's why you're relying on the firearm. Now, should you not rely on the firearm? I do. I will, in the right circumstances, I will rely on that firearm if somebody is bringing deadly force against me. But anything less than that, you'd better be able to do, to address it and respond to it. And even if you have to do it with a firearm, being in some semblance of physical condition is going to aid you tremendously. And not being in that is going to hamper you tremendously. Okay, so that's the first thing. Almost to a man. There weren't any women in this, but that doesn't mean that women aren't out there sometimes. I usually find that the women are in better shape, to be real honest. The women who are involved in the gun culture are almost always in better shape than the men. So my first piece of advice is that. Get in shape. It's no secret how to lose excess fat. And it's not excess weight, it's excess fat. Unless you are suffering from some medical, physiological condition that makes it impossible for you to change, the only reason, well, there is no reason not to change. The only thing holding you back is you. Now, you can say, and I get people all the time that say, well, as you get older, that's just what happens. No, it's not. That is not just what happens. I'm 68 years old. I weigh exactly the same as I did when I got married 20 years ago, which was exactly what I weighed 10 years before that. I can still wear the jeans. I can still wear my suit. I can still fit in to all those things. I may not be as strong and I may not be quite as fast. Okay? But, and if I really wanted to train hard, I could probably get back most of it, but I don't. I'll admit it. I don't train hard, but I'm able to do the things that are necessary. Okay? And I'm not going to pat myself on the back on this, but every fall when we start hanging Christmas lights, I'm still out there with the people 1/3 my age, and in many cases doing more, throwing the ladders around, climbing the ladders onto the peaks of houses, working all day. Those who work with me will tell you that's true. It's a matter of understanding that it's important and doing what it takes to do it. So I don't have, to be honest, I don't have much patience for people who try to make excuses that they can't do something when I know very well and good it can be done. That wasn't really my point here, but I went off on a sidetrack because I think that is important, because too many people shy away from that. Too many people stay away from it because they don't want to be seen as a judgmental and phobic or sizist, or all these ridiculous things that are hand-fed to people as excuses not to do what they know they should do to be the best they can possibly be. Simple as that. And I don't put down anybody individually as a result of that. I say, if you're not doing what's best for you, why not? You're worth more than you're giving yourself. See, that's what it's all about. And think about the people who depend on you as well. Okay. Now, getting back to this other thing. So that was the thing. These people, obviously, they rely on their gear, and boy, did they have the gear. My gosh. They had, in these videos, they had stuff all over them. They had battle belts. They had more gear than I've ever had in my life. And I know that none of these people have ever been in a gunfight. Most of them are never gonna be. Most of them, they don't look like, to me, they've never done much strenuous, prolonged physical activity, but man, do they have the gear. Now, what I saw in these training scenarios was a lot of silliness. I'll be real honest. A lot of silliness. And it wasn't just me. I just sat there and I watched because I thought, well, my son, I want him to be comfortable with, the gun situation and how people do it and all that. And we sat there, and as he was eating his cookies, he started saying things. He said, Dad, you wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that if they were doing that. And he was right. He says, why are they doing that? I don't even remember the specific things, but it was on a typical range. It was take 2 shots and then move over here and take a couple of shots and then move over there. Some people will say, well, that's a good drill. Shoot and move, magazine change and all that. Not the way they were doing it. Now, I'm sure that there are some excellent shooting schools in our country, and I'm not talking about them. Matter of fact, I know there are some excellent shooting schools. I am not talking about them. It kind of falls into the same thing about martial arts training. Everybody thinks it's cool. Everybody with the smallest modicum of experience, as soon as somebody gets a black belt, which, means squat, to be honest, in today's martial arts world, they start teaching. They want to teach. And you got all these people teaching self-defense. And they teach what they've been taught, and they teach within the parameters of the things that they know. And more often than not, those things don't even approach reality. Okay, and the danger is that people go to this training and they come out of it thinking that they've been trained and thinking that they're prepared. I used to see this in a lot of, because I used to teach martial or defensive tactics, and I also taught self-defense for women. Now, when I taught self-defense for women, a lot of the women, I mean, the things that I told them to do and showed them how to do, they were like, ugh, ugh, ugh. I said, well, this is what it takes. You have no idea how brutal an attack is. This is what could be happening to you, and this is what's going to give you a small chance of surviving. And when women came out of my classes, they actually knew some things they could do to survive, but none of them felt like they were empowered. Now let me explain to you why that's important. Because I would see a lot of these others, because I used to publish a martial arts magazine, and so I would be in a position to see a lot of these other self-defense for women classes. And most of them were filled with more BS than I mean, it astounded me, the kind of stuff that was being taught, and therefore the stuff that was not being taught in these classes. And it was all about making these women feel good so that they would talk up these classes to get their friends to come and all that, right? So at the end, they all left smiling and feeling empowered. And what they were really prepared for was a horrible situation if they ever tried to use what they had learned, so-called, in a real attack situation. That's what I call training damage. To where a training is taken, training is given, and at the end, the trainee comes out worse than before because they think they have abilities they don't have. And as a result of that, it sets them up for failure. And when you fail in an attack situation, whether it's just a physical non-firearm attack or in a gunfight, if you fail, it's a big failure. It's a tough nut. And that's what I saw here too. I've seen it in other classes, not the premier classes, but I've seen it in too many of these gun classes. They set up a simplistic scenarios. Everybody comes with all their mag pouches and all their stuff and all that, and their caps and their t-shirts with all the cool sayings on it, right? And they go out there and they act very, very, very militaristic with the whole thing. And they do the silliness, the what did McNamara call it? Range theatrics, I think he called it. That's the truth, man. I mean, it's just all performance art. You don't do that in the world. I mean, not like that. And they all, it's kind of a mutual admiration society that everybody's in this class doing all these things. Move, shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, but not in a way that really ingrains it. See, moving and shooting is good. Magazine changes are good. All those things are good, but it's all in how it's done. And like I say, in a minute, I'm going to shoot another one for Patreon only. So if you're not on Patreon and you want to get deeper into the weeds, this is the kind of stuff that I deal with over on Patreon. And it's about proper dry practice. Dry practice that will actually help you in real situations. But back to this. And when I see this, and then I saw that this ranger was using this as an advertisement, a marketing tool, I see who they're marketing to. They are not preparing people for the realities of a firearms encounter. they're preparing them to think that they're trained. My point is this: training damage is what results when a person thinks they're trained when they're not, or has learned something and believes that its effectiveness is more than it actually is. Because then, it's like a training superscar. It carries with it a belief. It's not just a wrong practice. It's a belief that what they do now is effective. And it's not. I know why all this is done. It's big business. It's the same reason all the silliness in the martial arts is. When there's plenty of good martial arts, well, there's not plenty of good martial arts. There is some good martial arts training out there, but the vast majority of it is just silly. It's worthless. And you try to use that stuff, to protect yourself someday, you're in for a big disappointment. Steve, why can't you be nice? Why can't you tell everybody that it's okay, whatever they're doing? Because it's not. Because if you're not accomplishing what you think you're accomplishing, it's setting you up for having a bad day, and I don't want that. When I train people, I want them to be able to have some chance of being successful when they come up against the situation for which we're training. So my 12-year-old son looked at that and said, Dad, that is just, I would never do that. Why would you do that? Why? And he even added some other stuff. And I've never talked to him about this stuff. You know what's going on in his mind? Common sense. Common sense. He even added some things like, Dad, you know what I would do? And then he said that. I said, that's right. You're right. A lot of times if people would just go along with their common sense as opposed to believing all this stuff that they hear in these training classes, they'd be better off, because they would be thinking, they'd still have some caution and some fear in their mind that makes them think, gee, man, I'd better get behind something. I'd better do this. I'd better do that. And you use some of that fear to actually help them until they get some good training from a good training school. Instead of just standing out there and doing the little two-step, bang, bang, step to the right, bang, bang, step to the left, bang, bang, change mag, bang, bang. Okay. I'm going to talk more about training on magazine changes and things like that on the dry training over on Patreon, so join me there. But this just drives me nuts. I've never really made one on this before, and I kind of stayed away from it because, to be honest, it's not my purpose to call people out or put people down or anything like that. But this is serious business, and I know that all these, probably every gun range has classes like this, and because there's big money in it. There's a lot of money in it. Because you know why? Because there's a lot of these guys that, instead of maybe, pushing themselves away from the dinner table and going out and running a little bit and starting to push some weights and developing their physical abilities, there's too many that would rather reach in the hip pocket, take out a credit card, get on the internet, and buy some more gear, so that they can wear it to the next training class, in which they're going to go bang, bang, 2 steps to the right, bang, bang, 2 steps toward the target, bang, bang, magazine change, 2 steps back, bang, bang. Guys, if you want to stay alive, you need to find something different. Okay? I could probably go into a lot more of this. I think I've said all I need to say on this. That is training damage. It's Take a person who might survive as a result of their own fear and understanding that they don't know what they're doing. Be surprised how many people survive and come out on top without any training at all just because they're scared shitless and are trying to survive. But if you think you're all that because you had some training and you don't realize that what you've had ain't really training, make your own determination on that. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that or else I'll get too far into the weeds. Think about it. Think about it. Go find some good training. Save a little money on all your gear. If you want to go to some good training, it's pricey. It can be pricey. But gosh, these guys, with the gear I saw on them, they could go to a lot of schools. So think about that. Remember, we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. But preparing really means preparing. It doesn't mean acting like you're preparing. Right? Okay. Hope I didn't offend. Well, if I offended anybody, that's the way it goes. I don't live in hope. I pretty much say it how I see it. But anyway, you all have a good day. I hope that maybe this helped a few people think about it and sets them down the proper road. And because it really can be the difference between life and death. You all have a good day and a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.